So, start off, it's going to be Bretonnia versus the Vampire Coast. I've gone for a mass archer build, some anti-air, fairly elite infantry. And we'll see how it pans out because on the opposing side, we're seeing 4 units of mortars and a bunch of deck droppers. That's basically it. So I'm actually feeling pretty confident here. As the mortars shoot, you can pretty easily dodge their first volley by pulling your troops away and then advancing again. And you see all the mortar shots land in front of my archer. We'll keep them alive until they can get into range. And when they can fire on the mortars, then the game is as good as done. So let's see if this all pans out according to theory. The mortars have fired again. So the usual pull back and then pull forwards. It does slow down my advance a tiny bit. Means this Count Noctilus Necrofex Colossus is going to be doing a bit more damage than I would have hoped. But his DPS isn't very high in general, so that's not too much of a problem. Here we go, the mortars have fired again. This time I'm only pulling away with my peasants. It will speed up the advance of my infantry by a bit, and I do want to get my infantry engaged. These are battle pilgrims, and they will kill zombies fairly efficiently. The peasants will be taking to the flanks, and here we go. Gunbats are moving in. Now, they're focusing down Gotrek. And that means now it's time for me to bring in the Pegasus Knights. Noctilus is going to throw down his summon to punish my archers. And because of that, my archers, they're going to want to have knights actually supporting them. Looks like my knights actually landed. A little bit of a misclick from me. But yeah. I'm just going to be ready for the summons. Gotrek will be diving directly into Count Noctilus. He'll do pretty well in that situation. And as for the dwellers below, there's actually not a lot of good targets for it. So I'll just hold on to that for now. And nice. It looks like my Pegasus Knights are chasing off the deck droppers fairly well. The archers have nearly killed off all of the mortars. Very good for me, and even though a few of the archers are routing off, they will come back in due time. The Pegasus Knights will be able to finish off the rest of the flyers, and then I think that should be the end of the poor Vampire Coast here. Really, the only micro that I really have to focus on is Gotrek, actually having him chase off Noctilus properly. I am also losing many of my archers, but with all the mortars down, they're going to be coming back in no time. So I should be completely fine. The front line is now broken in. And Noctilus is on the run. So this is a very good situation for me. Let's see here. The Pegasus Knights are really the biggest pain here, as they do shut down the deck droppers really hard. They essentially got no value for the entire game. And that's really what caused most of the issues for the coast this game. In this case, it was sort of just a build advantage that really helped carry my situation for sure. And yeah, it looks like that's probably gonna be it. Just closing out the game, finishing off the caster. And there's no more flyers left, so I can actually land all of my Pegasus Knights now on top of Noctilus, and he'll be going down extremely quickly. There we go. Peasant archers are now rallying, and that is going to be the end of the Vampire Coast. Yeah, they have nothing to really chase them off, so yeah, that's it. There's no more commentary to be cast at this point. I guess I'll turn on chat and take a look at what you guys are talking about. Indeed, yeah, I am on the Fey Enchantress faction. She is one of the best lord options for Bretonnia. Really, you only see Lewin if you need the armor debuff, which means that you do actually see him used in up against Chaos, but most of the time it's gonna be Fey Enchantress. She is a very slippery unit. Of course, she comes in with all of her crazy buffs and so forth. The Mortis engine effect, spell casting, relatively cheap. There is a lot to love. Or maybe not, maybe love is the wrong choice, but there's a lot that's good about the Fey Enchantress for sure. Hey Loopy, happy to have you in chat. Hope you're enjoying so far. I'm not sure which side you usually cheer for in this case. Do you cheer for the Bretonians, or do you cheer for the Vampire Coast? Or perhaps neither. I know both factions not particularly loved, but still very strong in general. Lots of love to hate. Oh, what the? My Fey Enchantress, she's dead. Oh no. But yeah, like I said, way too many win conditions. With Bretonians in general, or really any Vampire Coast matchup, it's very important that you actually finish off the archers. They're really easy to rout the first time around, but the big problem is that they're just gonna rally and come back and really ruin your day. This is the same with High Elf archers. It's the same with Bretonian archers, Greenskin archers, Empire. It's very important that they get finished off, otherwise they'll all be back and their damage is more or less the same. Even if I had lost all of my infantry here, it would have been a kite game till the end, and there we go. The coast is down. That's gonna be game. Alrighty. You vote Bretonnia unless coast has a lot of depth guard. Depth guard are always fun. I think yeah, Bretonnia is the underdog in this matchup for sure. Go now, let's look at the damage on these guys. Pretty good. Some of them didn't pay for themselves, but most of the guns had to fire in on them, so I think it was still worth it. Let's see. The Deeps caster was actually pretty interesting, but I'm not sure how I feel about it. Usually having pistol summons helps a ton, and these two animated hulks definitely didn't pay for themselves. So here we go. The next game, it's going to be a suggested army list. Bretonians up against the Skaven. The mass archer build, more than enough archers to survive a while against the poison wind mortars. And for the Skaven, what are we seeing? Some Packmaster action. 2 of them, in fact. Now, I'm gonna need to, let's see here, ward them off with Lewin and my cavalry. Probably, to the best of my ability. The mortars are gonna hit regardless. No point really dodging, as that only slows down my advance. And we'll see what we can do. Just diving in towards them. I have a Manticore summon. That'll work out pretty well. And also very important, I need to prevent the poison wind from getting in too much damage. It will poison wind mortars. If I clump up my units at all, they're getting more value than they should. So very important that I spread out my troops. And now that they're firing on my cavalry, that's actually pretty good, because can actually dodge their shots using cavalry. Now Lewin's just gonna dive right on in off the bat. There's gonna be like a snickage somewhere, so I'm actually just gonna bait the dive in, but a little bit of a misplay. Lewin does actually land in there, but not too bad. He does escape, and now the Manticore summon will hopefully shut down the mortars. There are quite a few Globadiers, so no need to actually move in with my infantry just yet. They would be taking a lot more damage than they should if I were to send them in. And instead, just gonna be the Manticore diving into the back while my cavalry focuses on the infantry fight. Lewin, he's just gonna be landing in, trying to stall out the Skaven forces as much as possible. And then the Knights with their cycle charging will hopefully clear out most of these forces. Definitely not a guarantee. In fact, a few of my archers actually getting out of position is pretty scary. Mortar still alive despite the Manticore summon. It could get pretty rough. We'll have to see. These rat ogres specifically are getting in quite a bit of damage, but with the Skaven front line starting to buckle and the mortars actually getting routed off, I think I should be okay, especially now that I actually have a few knights that have broken into the back line. They'll be able to do quite a bit of damage, and as for Lewin, he is absolutely getting murdered. I'm gonna have to pull him away before he dies to Skrolk here. And Then it's just using my cavalry to actually focus down as many of these deadly, deadly mortars as I possibly can. The balance of power is actually looking pretty bad at this point, but with Lewin healing up, he should be able to start punishing Squolk again. I also have my another Manticore summon I could throw in, so I think I'll be okay. Let's go ahead and take stock of the situation. We got rat ogres over here still alive. Most of the Skaven weapons are gone, which means I have a pretty heavy mobility advantage. But probably the scariest threat to me right now are the Packmasters. Lewin is going to have to be the main target to deal with those guys. As for my Beast Caster, she is actually getting killed off right now. I'm going to need to pull her away so that she can actually use her summon. It's not the worst thing in the world if she dies, but it is very important that I actually try and get off that other Manticore summon. Because if I can kill off Squolk, that would actually be a pretty big boon for me. And there we go. The summon can now drop. And we'll see if Squolk is going to fall here. These Poison Wind Mortars are still alive, though. I'll want some way of dealing with them in a bit. But for now, the focus is on gooning out Squolk. Packmasters look like they'll be diving in too, but of course I have Lewin. He hasn't routed yet, so he does have his leadership buff. And as long as I keep him near the archers, I think I should be fine. As for Squolk, he's going down. And with a little bit of cycle charging from the Manticore and Lewin, that should be it. There's not a lot that can really kill him. So I think I should be just fine. Lewin lands in. He's going to pull away immediately before anything terrible happens to him. And with my rallying archers, I'm going to see if they can help me win the day here. Manticore continuing to force path it towards Squolk, as I am and want to do to actually snipe him out. Packmaster diving in towards my archers isn't too threatening because I have Lewin nearby. And it looks like, yeah, there we go. Squolk is now routed. That's going to be a pretty nice time for me. One of the Packmasters does dive in. I'm going to move in with Lewin here. Try and kill it off, as I do have a lot of archer support. And then just disengage with him as quickly as possible. Squolk looks like he will be just barely surviving. That's a bit unfortunate. And I'm going to have to find a way of actually killing him off here. Yeah, I'm just gonna send in Lewin there. My archers might get compromised by the brood horrors. But if I can just kill this guy off, that would be a huge boon for me. Looks like the Packmasters even disengaged to save Squolk, which is really good for me because it means that my archers will be able to continue firing in on this blob. Now, what is bad is that the single unit of Poison Wind Mortars that is still alive will be able to punish me for quite some time more. Not to mention the Packmasters are still very high on HP, and the infantry advantage isn't really in my favor. Although I do see an opportunity to charge into Squolk. I'll knock him off. See if I can charge him with Lewin. I'll throw down a heal too. Pick Lewin up. But it looks like Squolk, he does manage to dodge the shots. That is very unfortunate. However, it looks like Lewin will be able to take off without too much of an issue. We'll see. The Packmaster actually does manage to land a few hits. Squolk, he does slow down a summon. But Lewin can actually take this fight. He's not terrible here, as with the archer support, the Packmasters will go down fairly quickly. But disaster, Lewin gets very close to routing off. And I think that might just be it. If he dies here, that's going to be the end of him. But if he takes off, yes, and he does, that's just barely gonna keep me in it. Oh boy. So definitely a very close game right now. Squolk still manages to live with no real easy opportunities to snipe him off. Packmasters are going to be a bit of an issue too. And honestly, the hits on Lewin were pretty bad. That caused a lot of damage, but one thing that I can do now that this Packmaster is routed off Can snipe out Squolk with Lewin. There we go, a single attack manages to pull that off. And then for the other Packmaster, it's gonna be firing arrows at him until he's off the battlefield. Lewin manages to escape the might of this other Packmaster too. And as long as I can actually get Squolk off the battlefield, then I'm good to go. Looks like he is very much on the verge of getting killed off here. Lewin, he lands, he attacks, and he misses. No, he doesn't. He actually hits. And that's going to be the end of Squolk, which means that it's only one Packmaster left at this point. Up against a very beat up Lewin and a couple of very beat up archers. Definitely a very close game, but one that it looks like I might be winning. The Council Guard are probably the biggest threat here because of their because they do come in with a bit of what's it called? They have the Guardian effect to make this Packmaster much harder to kill. But as of right now, it looks like things are going okay. I can even use the Damsel of Life to heal up Lewin as soon as I get another Winds of Magic. And with a charge into the back of this Packmaster, I think that's going to be game. And there we go. We charge into the back. Lewin lands a hit. The Packmaster might snipe him out, but a huge volley of archer fire. Looks like it pushes him into army losses, and that's going to be it. GG. A very close game. But in the end, I just barely managed to snipe out all the single entity. Oh, man. Definitely very close. Oh my gosh, Lewin though, an absolute beast in melee. He managed to duel against Squolk in unoptimal circumstances, and he took out both Packmasters. He definitely did very well there. A lot more than the Fey Enchantress or even double Paladins would do, just because of the cycle charging potential. And as for the archers, they did a few of them did get shut down by the Poison Wind Mortars, but I sort of lucked out. There was only one of them, which means that some of my archers got insane value. 1,600 on this guy and 1,000 on this guy. Just absolutely crazy. My cavalry, let's see, actually doing okay, nothing too crazy. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the army. I think one misplay was almost losing Lewin to the two Packmasters, but other than that, looks like that I did what I needed to do. But for this next game against Alfredino, it is just a continued ODM practice day. I have a pretty nice anti-demigryph build. Got lots of archers, and it looks like the artillery is just a cannon, which is very good for me because, of course, the Empire artillery, if it's not a Hellstorm rocket battery, my archers are going to have basically free reign here. I'll just march right on up towards his formation, pivot a tiny bit so that I face the units of cavalry a little bit better. And then looks like a few huntsmen actually reveal themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and net them down if possible. Looks like Teclis is just barely out of range. Very unfortunate. But yeah, if I can get a solid volley on them, that would be a pretty good advantage for me. Sure. Now, a lot of the forces are going for a flank overload, so it's actually pretty important that I move out my troops to defend against that. Turn a few of my archers, leave the Lothern Sea Guard in the front. Whoa, and Teclis takes a huge fat cannon shot to the face, nearly dies because of it. He can heal himself up though, and I'm gonna dodge with him a tiny bit more than I would usually. There are a few casters here too, a light wizard, which means that Teclis is gonna have to be a tiny bit careful. Doesn't want to be taking too many cannonballs to the face, and just continued dodging will be more than enough to keep him safe. My spears are in a good position to defend. My cavalry will be able to punish these spearmen no issue. That works out pretty well. Let's see here. My archers are firing away, but a big dive in from the Empire Knights now is coming on in. A few of them looking to face up against my spears, but I have cavalry at the ready. Defend against that. And now for the big dive in, gonna be these demigryph knights. that I need to deal with. It's gonna be a bit of a task. Looks like they're going in for the full dive. I'm gonna go ahead and net them directly, then use the Plague of Rust, and then turn all my archers to fire in on top of them. Hopefully killing all of them. Oh, but Teclis, he gets knocked over or something, and his cast doesn't go off. Now that's really bad, but the Plague of Rust is still down. Those knights are still going to be taking a ton of damage. So it's not all lost, although Teclis dying is obviously quite bad. I'm gonna have to recover from that situation for sure. But we've killed off the most elite Empire unit, the Demogryph Knights. It's just, what, an Archlector that I have to worry about at this point, where I have a pretty nice cavalry advantage too. I'm feeling, I'm feeling decently confident about my odds. Empire forces routing off the edge of the map too. They might not even rally because of the edge of the map is so close. I am losing a few units of cavalry myself, but I have a pretty nice critical mass of archers at this point. I expect they should be able to gun down these Empire Knights. We'll have to see. I do have a lot of spears too, so my infantry advantage should be playing a rather large part. And for the single entities of Alfredino here, it's basically just these two guys. I can mostly ignore them. They really shouldn't be too much of a problem. Now my cavalry, they have all died out. That is quite unfortunate. As for the Empire Knights, they're pretty low too, but definitely not out of the game. And I really need to use my infantry advantage to shut down these guns. I've been sending my cavalry in towards them, but they've actually been getting gunned down fairly quickly. And instead, using my infantry is much better, as they are much more tanky. My cavalry can instead come in to fight the infantry of the Empire, and they'll be much more efficient in that situation. Not to mention the cavalry over here for Alfredino is gonna be pretty scary. Definitely not something that I want to be facing up against either, with my own cavalry. But given that these are spearmen, and more specifically Silverin Guard, they're gonna be more than enough to clear out the rest of these guys. My Silver Helms in the distance, though, they get completely murdered. Very unfortunate, but characteristic of my usual killing my own cavalry playstyle. Yeah, as long as these guns are shut down, we're good. As for the Archlector, I do have my all my archers. They can actually fire in on top of them, and at point blank range, he can't dodge a whole ton either. So I would expect him to go down fairly quickly. I don't think he has a ton of healing either, so that's also a pretty nice boon for me. So there we go. The game has turned into a massive archer advantage for me. And with really the only downside being my single entities, which are lacking a bit. As for my infantry that sallied out, they, let's see, they're not doing as good as I would have hoped, but still, no worry at all, despite the balance of power slowly creeping back into the favor of Alfredino. That's actually a little bit worrying. I'm gonna have to really focus on not making too many misplays here. Let's go ahead and line up my archers so that they can all target the huntsman at the same time. And then with their focus fire, they should be able to take them out. I'm also being particularly wary about my ammunition usage, because ammo is pretty limited. I do have a good amount, but I can't use it frivolously, otherwise I'll run out, and that could also cause a lot of issues. So definitely pretty scary. For now though, I'll continue pushing the advantage that I have with the Silverin Guard. They're doing pretty good. The Archlector, he's dodging, but still taking quite a few shots himself. He dives into some Lothern Sea Guard, but I can Plague of Rust him to increase the damage that he takes. And really, it's just the Huntsmen that are really worrying me. The Huntsmen, they have a huge skirmish advantage versus me, and they will be able to dodge fairly well. Alfredino's doing a pretty good job at that. Balance of power actually tips in his favor. The cavalry moves in and takes out some of my forces, Honestly, this could be bad. This could be a bad situation. I do have a lot of spears though, and these Empire Knights are beginning to get caught up. We'll shoot them in the backs as they retreat, and hope that that's enough. These silver bullets too. It's paramount that I actually shut them down, and now I finally have my spears moving in to shut down the range units. It took a while, but we finally got there. This Archlector too, the quest of continuously ignoring him continues. Another net goes down. Very nice for Alfredino. Shuts down these silver helms, which means I basically only have one of them left. If these guys go down. Still though, that should be enough. I think the balance of power is just deceptive. Let's see, the huntsmen are continuing to retreat. I can finally shut down the cannon in just a second. As for this Archlector, let's see if I can get a volley in on him. I'll throw down a Plague of Rust, and the volley fires. It gets pretty good damage, but he's continuing to chase my archer, so he dodges most of the shots. The Silverin, getting charged by cavalry. I did not brace them for impact, and they got punished for it. A little bit unfortunate, but take a look at the Archlector. He's taking a lot of damage. He's nearly down, and it's just chasing off these huntsmen now. The silver bullets won't have too much time to turn and fire. The light priest is gone, and it's all come down to this Archlector. Plague of Rust still on 9 seconds. That's very good for me. Empire Knights get a charge in again on my Silverin. I really need to start focusing on microing that properly. And as for the Archlector, a final volley comes in, and he lives, and he's unbreakable. The mad lad. Yeah, he's actually gonna be continuing to survive apparently. But surely the unbreakable will wear off in a second. He only has 27 HP, and I think despite Alfredino's honestly impeccable micro, this game is gonna be over. Archlector is down, balance of power is back in my favor, and these huntsmen, I don't need to chase them anymore as they have used up all their ammunition. It's just gonna be a simple march forwards and win the game. Whoops, Alfredino. He typed in good luck, have fun, not GG. But yeah, the game is basically over at this point. Despite, I think, his superior micro build-wise, I was pretty well set. He didn't really have enough to overwhelm my archers this game. And my Silverin Guard were fairly... they were in a pretty good place. The Silverin Guard, in fact, in general, just really hard carried. They won the infantry fight as expected. That's gonna be it. Still a very scrappy fight. Rip brave Archlector, yeah. When it comes down to the late game, Alfredino's cavalry and single entity micro go through the roof. They will be dodging like madmen for a really long time. Basically impossible to catch. I knew you could do it, never doubted you. Okay, Bliblington. Oh my gosh. The biggest pick though were these Demogryph Knights. I think Alfredino, he did make a pretty major misplay losing these guys. That's about 2,000 gold that he traded out to kill off Teclis. In the end, I don't think it was really worth it. And he should have, if he managed to keep them alive, it would have been much better. But otherwise, his overall play was very scary. Especially with these huntsmen that managed to get quite a bit of value despite how many archers I had. Alright, well here we go. It's a Tomb King's build with no units. Mostly single entities and skirmishers. Arc in the black. And you know what? Honestly, this is pretty good for me. Essentially what I have is a mass archer build. And they can ward away the cavalry like no one's business. I have a flying squad to deal with the carrion. Like honestly, I'm not worried at all. This is actually really good for me. I just need to make sure that my archers keep firing and that I have a few knights to defend against these guys, and then we're good to go. A few Nehekara horsemen come on in. The Necropolis Knights are probably one of the scarier things. Dive in onto my forces, but let's start off with a charge in on these Nehekara horsemen. That'll be able to kill off most of them. As I disengage, I can use Henri with his crazy charge to dive in on Arc in the Black, and now it's my archers firing in on the Sphinx. My knights are on protection duty. They're purely here to stall out the Tomb Kings so that my archers can keep on firing. Same with my peasants. And we'll see how this big rough and tumble fight goes. Healing on the Hippogriff Knights is going to be huge. And we'll see how this goes. Essentially, if I can kill off all of the single entities or all the mobility for the Tomb Kings, I'm good. A few carrion are flying in, though. And let's see, my Lord has taken a bit of damage. I can heal that up with a regrowth. And we'll see how this goes. The Necropolis Knights are probably one of the scarier things to come in towards me. And I'm mostly just going to be ignoring all these scary Tomb King forces and just clearing out their mobility first. My archers will rout off and come back later in the battle. And once my archers are freed up, then I have a pretty nice advantage against all of the Tomb Kings, all of these single entities and so on. So that should work out pretty well. I've secured 2 of my archers who are now online and operational. The Sphinx reveals itself, but I'll be moving in with my 2 single entities to snipe it out. My caster too, throwing down the heals to protect them. And my knights are going to be running a blockade. They're just going to be slowing down these, what are these called? The Necropolis Knights as much as possible. I'm also going to be evacuating with my single entities to make sure that they don't take too much damage. They're just going to be focusing on the carrion, and I'm just going to be using my numbers to my advantage. Just spreading out as much as possible and making it hard for Alfredino to actually chase things off here. Still, we have lost a few of my knights. The Hippogriff Knights are extremely beat up too. That's definitely not great, but my single entities are doing fairly well. Most of his forces too have been caught up in this sort of blob fight situation. So, yeah, my archers are gonna start winning the day here, I think. As for my lords and heroes, it's just their duty to cycle charge as much as possible, finding targets where they can. For example, this Sphinx, which is a bit out of position, and just sniping them out. Sort of a hit and run strategy. Let's see here. As for in the back here, it looks like I've successfully chased off most of the Tomb King's forces. Have my archers online and operational. The Necropolis Knights are definitely going to be a bit scary. But as for these Nehekara horsemen, they're going to be falling. And then, as long as I have a few archers left to fire away, then I'm good. My caster is going to have to be a tiny bit careful, though. We definitely don't want her to get caught up. And let's just grab all of my single entities and important units and get them healed up. Definitely want them to be in tip-top shape to kill off the rest of the Tomb Kings here. Heal comes down, and while Alfredino dives in towards my archers, I should be able to get some pretty easy picks on these Necropolis Knights. They do have some very high mass and can be pretty scary. So it's important that I don't stay in this fight for too long. But like you can see here, Alfredino's desperately trying to shut down my archers, and that charge is quite devastating. However, he disengages from my archers to fight into this, to dive into this blob fight. And we'll see how that goes. My lord manages to escape, but Henri looks like he might actually be a bit pinned down. Let's see here. Gonna have to fight to the best of his ability. I have heals to support, and more importantly, these archers, the bane of anyone going for a blob, are gonna be just constantly firing in, doing a lot of damage. And you can see the 2 Hippogriff Knight lords are pretty effective here. Yeah, they surprisingly enough, Henri has taken barely any damage in this engagement. I'll have the damsel nearby too, just to provide some extra magic resist. And then now that I've killed off most of these troops, these guys can disengage for a pretty clean cycle charge once again. So honestly, not too bad. The biggest loss was my Hippogriff Knights, which did end up dying, unfortunately. And there are still a few Nehekara horsemen, so definitely this fight is not over yet. Let's see here. How are those Nehekara horsemen doing? Actually pretty well up against my archers. And that's going to be one of the scarier things going on. There are still a lot of Necropolis Knights too, and you know what? Despite that archer fire into the blob, I think we may be done for here. Fortunately so. I'll continue scrapping it out though. Perhaps another dive in onto these Necropolis Knights could actually take out quite a few models. Alternatively, I could switch targets to fly in towards Arkin the Black. And if I snipe him out, it could also go pretty well. But I have a feeling that might have been a bait. I'm actually going to disengage here. And use my Lord. Dive in on this Cambrian War Sphinx. And we'll see if I can finish it off at this point. He's going to be landing in as many hits as he can. Henri. Going to disengage for the cycle charge. Spirit Leech comes down onto him. My caster does provide magic resist, so he's actually fairly okay in that circumstance. But I think that's going to be it. The mass archers, they just got shut down by the Nehekara horsemen. I was not able to finish them off. And unless these guys do amazingly versus the rest of these Necropolis Knights, I believe that's going to be it. Let's see, does my Lord have anything? My hero does not have anything. And a last desperate heal from my caster, but I think this many Necropolis Knights is going to be too much. There we go. Game nearing its end. Let's see, these guys are actually duking it out fairly well, surprisingly enough. The healing is helping a lot for sure. A big skeleton summon, definitely nothing you would want. And there we go, that's going to be army losses. GG! And for everyone who voted for me, rip all your channel points. Oh, what the? I had chat on for the whole game there, rip. So, the main thing that happened there. My archers actually did get quite a bit of damage. I'm wondering if I should have taken the single entity fight earlier while I had a ton of archers. But there was a lot of mobility here. I'm not entirely sure. Alternatively, if I had played a bit better, I could have sniped these guys out, but... the main problem here, I think, playing as the sub-faction, you don't have Lewin, and I think Lewin with an archer build here would have been way better. He brings a minus 30 armor, and he's a blob buster for sure. He would have been able to really crunch up these halberds, and I think the normal Bretonian Lord is generally a bad idea. So I'm blaming you, Loopy, for the suggestion, essentially. But of course... there were definitely some misplays there. Specifically, my Hippogriff Knights. They got sacrificed too early for sure. Now, Alfredino is ready. He's playing the Wood Elves up against the High Elves. I've gone for a kite style of build, and it looks like either he's rushing or kiting himself. Only a slightly larger army than mine. We'll see how well I can do here. I'm fairly confident in a kite match between Alfredino, and I didn't want to go for a full rush as... he is very good at defending his forces. So we shall see. He did give the good luck have fun, so presumably he's ready. Maybe something came up. Who knows? Yeah. So tech coming in with an interesting build. Yeah. These kite builds definitely are very non-traditional. You basically have no front line in this type of style. Now, Alfredino is coming in with 2 Zotes. Fairly low armored troops, very easy to rout. Dragon Princes should be able to do well against them. Now, techless. Arrows of Kronos do fly in towards him. I'm going to use a Potion of Chiroi as it does give him healing and 44 damage resistance. More than enough to really keep him alive. A volley of Deepwood Scout Fire comes in towards my, my Dragon Princes. Not too much damage, not a worry at all. And so far, I think I'm in a decent position. I'm in a very good space to kite Alfredino, and these Shadow Warriors are going to be doing a lot of damage to any Deepwood Scouts that show themselves. And it looks like they will be showing themselves. Possibly a really nice volley coming on in. I'm going to fire at these guys, and here we go. Let's see if I can trade up. We'll never see the volley actually hit, but presumably it does quite a bit of damage. The goal is to get Techless in a position where he can actually net down these guys. Wood Elves in this case don't have any nets, so Techless is actually free to just march right on up into their lines and look for that sweet net. I just have to make sure that he doesn't take too much damage. A big volley comes in, misses, and here we go. Techless, the hero, gonna be diving in. The net, it drops, and we'll see if I can actually take these guys out now. Gonna use a Phoenix, drop that on top of them, and then start firing into them with my Shadow Warriors. Techless has taken a good amount of damage himself, but there we go. A huge volley hits him, and an Arcane Phoenix absolutely melts that this Deepwood Scout contingent. That is a huge advantage for me. And now I just have to patch up Techless so he doesn't die to those 2 Deepwood Scouts. He's taking a good amount of damage. In fact, he might even die. That's a bit scary. We're gonna pull him nice and far away so that I can regrowth him and patch him up. Another Arrows of Kronos comes in towards him, and it hits. Techless, he heals though, and he should be able to patch himself up. Yeah, he's routing, but he'll be back soon enough. There's only one more Arrow of Kronos volley that can come in, and the Potion of Troy should be able to patch him up real good. So honestly, no big worry there. Deepwood Scouts do reveal themselves, but I will be able to fire in with my Shadow Warriors, and they'll be taking another fairly large hit. So all in all, I'd say things are going very well for me. The Dragon Princes too are at very high HP, and I don't think Alfredino in this case really has the ammunition to deal with these forces. A few of the Zotes are in though. Drycha actually pins down most of my Dragon Princes. That's very unfortunate. And we'll see how this plays out. This engagement is going absolutely terribly for me, but the one over here, my Dragon Princes are winning fairly well. Not to mention my Shadow Warriors almost have a free reign of the situation, except for these Deepwood Scouts, of course. Now, a big pendulum is going to be dropping directly on my Dragon Princes. Insane amounts of damage. That is terrible. Absolutely terrible. And suddenly things are looking pretty bad, I gotta say. Let's see here. Possibly some more Arrows of Kronos coming on in. And we're keeping an eye on it. It looks like they don't drop. And we just have to kill off these Zotes, really. Dragon Princes should be able to handle that situation pretty well. And we'll see. Yeah, the Zotes, they do have their armor debuff. That does actually punish my Dragon Princes pretty hard. And we're on the run, hoping that Techless is able to help out here. Oh boy, things went bad real fast. It looks like my engagement on the Zotes was pretty bad. Another Arrow of Kronos volley comes in. This time I use the Potion of Troy properly. Techless does manage to survive. And as for ammunition, it's looking, we're about medium on that front. These Shadow Warriors, I did have to loose a lot of volleys into these Zotes to do well. And really the loss of the Dragon Princes is the biggest hit. I'm not sure if I can really recover from that. But as long as I can continue landing volleys, we should be good. That one does a decent amount of damage to the Deepwood Scouts. And in the late game, the Dragon Princes and the Chariots should be able to carry. Presumably. I'm going to throw down a net here just to kill off these spears. There we go. I'm gonna use a Phoenix on them. And that may be a tiny bit inefficient. But I do really want to kill off those Eternal Guard. I also get a pretty nice volley onto some Zotes too. So that's a fairly effective trade. I need to keep an eye on their armor though. If they have their armor buff on, I really shouldn't be wasting shots into them. Also, I lost Techless due to a pretty bad misplay. I just left him standing and he got shot, volleyed, and murdered. And I think that's probably going to be it. Unless these Shadow Warriors really carry out the day. I think the major misplay was presuming that I'd be able to kill off the Zotes. But that really did not work out. It looks like they've thrown in another buff on top of themselves. Yep. Some more armor to keep them alive. And so I'm just going to target the other one with the Shadow Warriors. Even though things are bad, it's not over as long as I have ammunition on these guys. The Zotes do charge in, however. Do they have an armor buff? They do. Gonna turn on Fire at Will as I retreat before these guys get engaged on. Move in with the Dragon Princes. and see if I'm able to take them out. This is a bit of an inopportune time because they do have the armor debuff, but I'm trying to buy time for my Shadow Warriors to get their volleys off. So we'll have to see how it goes. I kill off a single unit of Zotes. My Lion Chariots have a potential to do okay too, but they're getting gunned down. And that's gonna be it. GG. Major misplay for sure. Losing off those Dragon Princes to the Zotes. I think they threw down their buffs, and I should have disengaged immediately after. If you just take a look at these guys, definitely the big problem over there. Teclis did okay. I did enjoy him. The double Deepwoods, what are these guys called? Waystalkers, I think, did okay. Actually, they did really good killing off Teclis, surprisingly enough. And in the end, I think it was just that main engagement. Although this build is illegal, I think that didn't make a huge part here. So GG. Next game, Bretonnia up against the my High Elves here. We're seeing a couple Trebuchets, a couple Archers, very standard when it comes to the Bretonnia play here. For me, it's a bit substandard. I've gone very heavy on the infantry, and immediately Trebuchets firing in on my Dragon Princes. Gonna have to dodge that as well as they can. Thankfully, Trebuchets not the most accurate artillery in the game. In fact, probably the least accurate artillery, but it means my dodging is going to be a little bit less effective. Now immediately my Illyrian Reavers have free reign to charge into the back. Seems like my sneaky play may have worked, and I should be able to actually pick off a few of these guys. Some Knights do charge in, and perhaps a pretty clean engagement for me is on the way, but I don't think Alfredino's gonna just charge straight into my spears. That would definitely be a little bit uncharacteristic of him. Now what I want to do is just to get this engage on as quickly as possible. My Reavers have shut down the back line, my Dragon taking insane amounts of archer fire, and I just need to get my infantry engaged as quickly as possible. Let's go ahead and pull back with my Dragon Princes. Don't want them to be taking too much damage from the archers. And here we go. Cavalry fights abound. We'll see which one Alfredino actually gives us. This unit over here charges in towards me. Plague of Rust. Perfect timing, but my caster is too far away. That is very unfortunate. And it means that I'm going to be taking a bit more damage than I would have liked. However, the Plague of Rust, it still helps for sure. I take out a good amount of questing knights over there. Not to mention my Reavers are doing surprisingly well. And my front line will eventually push through. We're seeing these Bretonnian peasants starting to get routed off. My spearmen are holding pretty good. And with the regrowth, those Dragon Princes are going to be up and operational in just a second. So we have the Bretonnians on the run. And that's definitely a pretty big plus. We've killed off one of their units of cavalry. And now it's just moving forwards and keeping the pressure on the archers. My Dragon Princes are going to have to be pretty careful here. And here we go. Potentially a pretty good breath attack. Gonna throw that down right on top of these guys. It looks like I kill off most of the questing knights, which is very good. However, my caster is now getting gooned out by the paladins. I'm gonna have to pull her away and just run as far as I can with her. It should serve as a fairly good distraction. That's my front line. Continues to push forwards. I do lose my Reaver archers, which is probably one of the biggest, most unfortunate losses for me. But what I do get is another charge from the questing knights. Plague of Rust combination on top of them means that they'll be taking insane amounts of damage. And it looks like that strategy is working out fairly well for me. The Plague of Rust has really melted most of the knights here. And there we go. That's another unit of knights gone. My infantry continues to push towards the archers specifically. And with the dragon, I'm in a fairly nice position. Constantly push forwards. But a huge comet comes down. Kills off one of my unit of Dragon Princes. They're going to be out of the fight. And it's one unit of cavalry for me against the two very high HP units for Alfredino. This Trebuchet is still online. Miraculously, I think it just was walking away for just the longest time there. But I have another Plague of Rust on the way in just a second. For my caster, she's at the ready. So let's see how this goes. I'm gonna brace my spears. I'll get a pretty nice charge here. It looks like the cavalry just disengages entirely instead. And yeah, with the charge of the dragon princes, we do fairly good there, but I'll need to disengage. I really don't want my dragon princes to take too much damage here. And making sure that they get their charges is going to be of the utmost importance. The next goal is taking out these defenders of the fleur-de-lis. And the opportunity might present itself right now, actually. They charge into my troops. And here we go. Overcast Plague of Rust. Looks like that should actually end them fairly well. My dragon is just going to be flying about. My infantry is still doing a very good job at shutting down all of these peasant bowmen. And it looks like the Plague of Rust, it might have been a little bit wasted. The defenders actually managed to pull away from my dragon princes. And they avoid most of the damage, but Plague of Rust does last a very long time. And I could potentially kill them off here. As for all these archers, I thankfully have a unit of spearmen in the back who are able to slowly move in on top of them. But just the nice pull away from Alfredino has kept these guys operational for a pretty long time. My caster even gets compromised. So I'm a little bit worried here. How are my dragon princes doing? They're doing okay against the cavalry, but I actually took a pretty bad trade there in that engagement. And I think that might be the game, as my caster now gets chased off. And that's gonna be pretty rough. Oh man, I think I almost had the game there. There were actually some really good engagements, but in the end, I think my infantry could have done better at chasing off these archers. Even though I was babysitting them, they did actually clump up at some points. And if I had gone wider, that could have actually gone okay. As for the dragon, it wasn't really meant to do especially well here. It was more as a late game cycle charge piece for the Bretonnian single entities. And it looks like that's gonna be it, unless I pull out a miracle, which is always possible, but pretty unlikely in this situation. I'll call it GG at this point. That's gonna be it. There's no real way to kill off the paladins, and the archers won't really be shut down, so GG. Although a pretty good test. The dragon princes did okay. The ROR one actually got pretty beat up, but this one did okay. I do really like the Plague of Rust combo. I think I'd be using that more in the future. Yeah, not bad. Now the Rangers, how did they do? The alternative would have been Silver in Guard, and that might have worked out a bit better. But I sort of like this. But the Dragon, I think I might still run the Dragon. The Healer was good, and the Reavers were a nice touch in the back line. So I'll play around with this more in the future for sure. GG. We'll see how this build goes. It's High Elves against Lizardmen. I've brought Imric and a bunch of Dragon Princes. I'm fairly well set to deal with a blob fight, especially with my Plague of Rust. That should work out really well. And as he pivots his army, I'll just turn my army like so. And that'll deny any flank overload advantage that he has. He sees my pivoting. I'll re-pivot so that we're just constantly facing him. And then just advance a tiny bit. Now he's moving a small contingent over here to the flank. I'll move a similarly sized contingent to go ahead and deal with them. And then the Sisters of Avalorn will start getting a bit of damage in. Just lighting up those skink cohorts as much as they can. And as for Imric and these two Dragon Princes, they're getting ready for the fight of their lives. That's going to be a big battle against Mazdamundi. And to help assist, I need these princes to be cycle charging infantry as much as they can. For Imric, he'll be able to push back Mazdamundi decently, although a big dive in here onto my spears is going to be pretty painful. He does a slam into the spearmen. Thankfully, they're not Silverin, so that's not too much damage. What's this? A net onto my Dragon Princes. Pretty interesting. Now, for the mainline fight, where things actually get pretty interesting, like actually, I've said that word too many times at this point. We're gonna see if I can actually kill off Mazdamundi here. Imric, he's gonna proc all of his buffs, slam directly into him, and just try and light him up. He has a ton of buffs, and the Sisters of Avalorn will be able to really help out here too. And they won't be too worried, as I do have Dragon Princes protecting in that situation. Of course, I can throw down a final transmutation down in here too. And oh boy, my Dragon Princes get completely annihilated by Ruination of Cities. That is a huge misplay on my part. But we're just going to continue grinding this out. I really want to see if I can kill off Mazdamundi here. He's in a pretty bad spot. He's completely surrounded by princes and spears. So I think it should be a victory here. Imric is doing fairly well. And despite the losses of my Dragon Princes, this blob fight is very well in my advantage, especially considering the spears. So I'll just continue fighting it, really. Mazdamundi has used up all of his AoE spells to secure this victory, or to secure this position. But look at that, Imric, just an absolute boss, coming in and yeah, just putting on the beating. Mazdamundi is nearly dead. He can't use his charge bonus to really assist him. And with a big charge in from my Dragon Princes now, I think I should be able to kill this toad. We'll see though. Imric, he still has to deal with the Carnosaur. He has no healing. But Mazdamundi, he is falling. And there we go. We actually get him to rout. That is absolutely amazing. And the goal now is specifically just chase him off the battlefield. I'm going to pull off a few Dragon Princes to go ahead and do that. As for the infantry fight, my Dragon Princes have done their job. The Sisters of Avalorn, I still have one of them alive. The other one trying to keep away from a few skinks. And there we go, we routed off the Feral Stegodon. Next up for Imric is the Carnosaur. And while I pin it down with Dragon Princes, he can get ready for a cycle charge. And he should be able to take it out. Minus an insane amount of melee defense. Shots from the Sisters of Avalorn. And guys, I think I done did it. Mazdamundi is gone. The Stegodon will rally, but it's not very threatening at this point. I still have a ton of princes left. There we go. Mazdamundi is nearly down. The Carnosaur is routing off the battlefield. And yeah, that's going to be it. Honestly, there's not much Alfredino can do left. It seems like everything went exactly as planned. Mazdamundi now off the battlefield. And it's basically just infantry left. You guys know the drill when it comes to infantry against cavalry. We have a massive advantage on that front. And the beast himself, Imric, coming out on top against 3 single entities. Mazdamundi goes down. The skink skirmishers weren't able to protect them. And that's going to be a fairly clean game. Surprise, surprise. I'm very happy with that. Look at that. He only went down to half HP. Yeah, just an absolute beast. I honestly love Imric when playing the High Elves. There we go. This was not part of the great plan. Feels bad, man. Yeah. Look at that. Sisters of Avalorn. I mismicroed one of them. They move fast enough where they shouldn't be getting caught by infantry. And that was my major misplay. But for Alfredino, he took a flank overload. And in the end, it just did not pay off. This build is designed to beat this type of overload style. And the Chameleon Skinks in the end, a lot of people say that they're very good, but they need a really long, drawn-out game to get their value. And in this case, without any Saurus, my front line held up for a really long time. And that's gonna be it. GG. Oh my goodness. Very good. This next game, up against Alfredino, I have brought myself a lot of elite cavalry. Maybe more than I should have, but it's designed to pick apart a greenskin build that goes too wide. And in this case, Alfredino has gone fairly wide, and he's taken a lot of skirmishers himself. So my army is actually fairly well suited for this current situation. And with these skirmishers sort of caught up between a rock and a hard place, I might even be able to catch a few of them. Let's see, it looks like my yeomen, they don't manage to get there in time, and I take a little bit of damage as punishment for it. For my knights, they are starting to take damage from the rock lobber by the looks of it, so I need to get engaged as quickly as possible and actually start trading with my cavalry. My single entities are at a huge advantage here, and they need to be pushing that as much as they can. And then it's just going to come down to how well I can actually cycle charge with all of my troops. Goblin moving in. He's trying to snipe out the Fey Enchantress, but it was a bit of a bait. Fey Enchantress can simply continue to run away. And now with the front line engage going down, let's see if I have enough micro to actually manage all of this cavalry. They need to be cycle charging infantry as much as they can, and just generally taking fights too. Let's see here. As for the front line, that should be collapsing pretty quickly. And let's see, some nasty skulkers. They do pin down a few of my Grail Knights, but the really great thing about these guys is that they are extremely difficult to kill. In a straight up fight against Orc Boar Boys, they have a huge advantage, not to mention my Yeoman Archers are supporting there too. But on the right flank, things get pretty dicey. Essentially a lot of Boar Cavalry pin down my my own guys, and that's definitely going to be working out of my favor. Not to mention my front line has now collapsed, and I'm starting to get worried again. My Grail Knights have done okay, but it looks like they might not have done well enough to actually survive here. Still though, I'll continue fighting. I need to be bouncing around with these guys a tiny bit more though, if I want them to be doing well. Especially staying away from fanatics where I can. And as for Gotrek, he needs to be fighting fights against single entities like this Arachnarok Spider. As for my knights, they are beginning to rally, and they'll be coming back into the battle in full force. The Fey Enchantress with her Mortis engine will hurt these guys a lot too. But honestly, in this build, there's a lot of anti-cavalry actually pinning me down, and I sort of walked into it. The nasty Skulker specifically put in quite a bit of work, and we'll see if Gotrek plus the Fey Enchantress is enough to squeeze out a victory here. I do lose a huge amount of knights on this flank, and that is gonna be really bad. In fact, the Boar Boys are coming out on top, and ooh, that looks like it's gonna be it. I think that infantry advantage for Alfredino and really just using the abilities of the greenskins really pulled out. And yeah, I'm wondering if it's the build wise though that really screwed me over, or just the my cavalry control. We'll have to see, but for now, that's gonna be a GG for sure. I think my Grail Knights could have been managed better. They did get picked off. There were a few fights that went okay with them, but they did not get their value off. Alfredino, his tech pieces to defend against that, his Great Shaman slowing down the Knights, and the nasty Skulkers too, were probably the biggest threats. The Skirmishers actually didn't get too much value, as I was playing an aggressive build. The Comet did do okay. That did help against the Cav, but let's see, I'm not sure. The Boar Boys didn't actually do. They did more than my cavalry, and they are a lot cheaper. Not sure. Maybe if I had gone for more infantry instead of yeomen, actually that probably would have worked out best. These guys didn't do too well, and what I really needed was infantry to hold the front line for me. The single entities were okay, but they didn't do amazing. There were definitely a lot of factors going on there, so I'll have to tune things up for sure in the future. But here we go. Final matchup between myself and Alfredino. It's a bit of a rush style. Many dogs, some depth guard, gunnery wights, and Lamprey's Revenge. Gotrek immediately. One of the best options against Lamprey's Revenge, diving in directly on top of them. Pegasus Knights heading straight to those poor little doggies. And now the archers are going to be dealing with Silostra. Now she's going to be throwing down a summon. I can see that coming miles away. Let's see if I can actually pin her down here. The dogs are going to be falling fairly quickly. Pegasus Knights, not a lot to actually kill them in this situation. And can I kill Silostra? We have a lot of gunfire coming down on top of her. The dogs are beginning to try and sneak through, but I have cavalry at the ready. Pegasus Knights are doing great, and honestly it seems like the archer fire is going to be hard carrying it in this situation. The Depth Guard are going to be eating a full Dwellers Below, as long as the Fey Enchantress actually manages to stay alive here. Getting staggered a lot, so that's actually a little bit scary. But, okay, looks like she can't throw down the Dwellers Below. Come on, Fey Enchantress, get out of there. She's in for a bit of a rough time. Got a little bit jostled in that situation, and she's just barely gonna manage to pull out of there. Definitely a very scary fight. But now that she's finally safe, I'm feeling much better now. And Gotrek, he can continue to go on and kill off all of these single entities. Like I said earlier, he's an amazing pick for actually killing off single entities. He is extremely hard to kill and does a whole ton of damage. Now, there are knights being summoned, and summons in general just crashing in to my forces. The summons, they will degrade over time though, and really the main thing that I have to do is actually finish off all of these dogs. If I can kill them off, then I'm good to go, because in the late game the archers should be able to carry. However, there are a lot of depth guard here. That's definitely pretty rough. Not to mention Gotrek 2 is actually getting nuked down pretty quickly. And a lot of my archers, they have routed off. Let's see, how many dogs are left? There is still a unit of dogs. Gotrek still holding fairly firm though. Gonna be helping a lot, and if he can kill off the gunnery wights, then we're golden. As for the Fey Enchantress, how's she doing? She's gonna be fighting Silostra. Definitely a bad engagement for her. And she's actually gonna get picked off here. Gotrek barely clinging on to life, and I think this rush might actually work out for Alfredina. It really depends on if the Fey Enchantress dies here, which looks like she will just barely manage to escape. Gotrek 2 just barely clinging on to life, and it's all about these scurvy dogs, because in the late game the depth guard mean nothing if I can finish them off. Or yeah, if my archers are still alive. In the late game, the gunnery wights are going to be a bit scary, but nothing I can't handle. Oh boy, but the Fey Enchantress, it looks like she's going to be off the battlefield. And with the loss of Gotrek, it's a little bit scary, I gotta say. I'm going to be experiencing some pretty heavy routes from the rest of my army too. But, taking stock of the situation, I do still have a lot of archers. The Fey Enchantress is very far away from routing off the map too. So I think the Pegasus Knights can save her. And now we're going to see the Vampire Coast's worst nightmare. It's gonna be a ton of archers just standing and firing for the rest of the game. The Fey Enchantress is dead, which is definitely unfortunate. And a bit of a misplay on my part, I gotta say. Probably could have kept her alive better. But here we go. As long as we don't see a mass rout from the archers, they have very high ammunition. I still have 5 of them left. And they'll just be constantly picking away at the forces of the Vampire Coast. The gunnery wights will be able to constantly poke away back at me too, though. And not to mention scab scrats are also very scary. So it could still go either way. And Silostra is also alive too, which is definitely a very rough situation. Scab scrat number 1 hits the archers. They rout one more rout and they're off the battlefield. But as the effect of losing the Fey Enchantress degrades, the archers, they come back. I still have knights to hold the line. And it's just about whether or not I have enough volume here. I actually don't have that many archers left right now. And another scab scrat is going to be getting them real low, that's for sure. So we'll see. We'll see. This is going to be a really close game for sure. Honestly, if the Fey Enchantress had survived, this actually would have been much more one-sided. And one thing that I can do right now, I really need to kill off this gunnery wight. I'm going to lose a few Pegasus Knights to do so, but their constant poke damage is really bad for me, and it's super important that they're off the battlefield. Because the scab scrats are pretty scary, and ooh, there we go. they rode off the Pegasus Knights, and it looks like I might just not have enough volume of fire to win out the day. Alfredino looking like he's coming in for the very close Vampire Coast victory. The snipe out on Gotrek worked out really well, and essentially just constantly staggering the Fey Enchantress so she couldn't get the Winds of Magic. Looks like it may just barely pull out the win. At this point though, Lamprey's Revenge with the regen can kill off the rest of the army, so I'll call it GG over here. Well played, Alfredino, well played. If I had to change the build, I would put the Fey Enchantress on a Unicorn. That would have made a huge difference, just like that. And I would have been set. This is, yeah. Because she doesn't get staggered, and I could have kept Gotrek alive. It would have been great. The Dwellers below on the Depth Guard would have killed them, but, you know, still, well played to Alfredino. And yeah, this modified build works out much better. Alternatively, you could put a little bit of gold on Gotrek to keep him alive more. And no, Alfredino can play more. Nice. I can fit 1 to 2 more. Okay, he says his brother doesn't need him, it seems. Wonderful, wonderful. Alright, so you get some bonus games, guys. So never mind, not the last game for Alfredino. I'm gonna be playing another one. Turns out he wasn't busy, and I'm going for a rush build. High Elf rush build. It's a little bit unorthodox. I'm a tiny bit exposed to these Centaurs, but with this sort of army, the skirmish potential is negated when you're being rushed. Not to mention the Eagles are very good at dodging too. They shouldn't be able to get too much damage, and I just need to get the frontline fight going as quickly as possible. The archers aren't especially scary, and I can even land in on top of these Centaurs and actually get in a couple free hits. They can't really surround and engage my guys because of well, yeah, they can't really move into to surround because I have cavalry at the ready. So with all that out of the way, we're continuing to advance and just pushing forwards while dodging as much as possible. Ungor spears are going to be a bit of a problem, but possibly a Centaur pick over here. That works out pretty well in my favor. Pull a few of these guys back, and then just march directly into a frontline engagement. Here we go. The big fight begins. Imric needs to use his horn to increase the weapon attack strength of all of these troops, and then I need to debuff the leadership of everything here. That'll work really well for routing off most of the Ungors. And then, once they're out of the battle, then I can snipe out Mogr with Imric. Go ahead and debuff his stats over there. I'm gonna increase the amount of terror in that situation and see how well these Silver Helms are doing. They're actually doing decently here. Mogr's taking a lot of damage. My caster is still alive, and this seems like it's actually going okay. One of my Eagles has routed off, though, unfortunately. But if I can actually kill off Mogr here, that would be huge. However, more importantly than Mogr is killing off this Cygor. So I'm going to get Imric, target him down. He has crazy anti-large values, so I'm hoping that'll be able to carry me out. Let's see here. We'll be using all of his buffs, and for the Flame Spire Phoenix, let's go ahead and disengage with that real quick. The cavalry engagements have gone okay, but the balance of power has now shifted. Let's see, Imric too, fully surrounded by the Cygor, and actually a couple Cygors, is in a pretty rough position. I'll increase his leadership, keep him in the fight for a tiny bit longer, and I probably need to send in some cavalry to support here. Same with the Phoenix, but his stats are very good. I think Imric should be holding for quite a while longer, and with the sweet leadership debuff, I think I'll even be able to rout off this ROR Cygor. That should actually improve my situation by quite a bit. Just that extra minus 16 leadership. We'll see if it's enough to get him to rout. There's still another 26 seconds. He's getting real close. And there we go. I do manage to get that guy to rout. Very good. But then the big summon from Mogr actually surrounding Imric. And the big question, will he survive this situation? It's looking pretty rough. He's gonna have to disengage and run away from these chaos spawn. And you know what? I think the bane of my initial, the thing that scared me initially, these Cygors or Centaurs with throwing axes, it seems like they may be able to pull through the wind, sadly enough. And that looks like it's gonna be game. Let's see, what do I have left? I have Eagles, I got Imric, but everything's routing off. It was a nice pick on the Eye of Morsliab, but that's gonna be it. GG. Yeah, just absolutely out-kited there for sure. That's gonna be it. Build-wise, the Eagles, I guess they didn't really do too well, sadly. They did catch out a few of the throwing axes, but they basically all got their value off on very high priority targets. I thought Imric would do better in this situation, but I didn't really account for the chaos spawn running him down. And that was really too much, plus tons of summons. He's a very good fighter, but you definitely don't want him taking too much damage. As for the caster, I think it was okay. And the silver helms, they did decently too. So not too bad. I think had I played perfectly, it would have been good, but this definitely felt like more of an uphill battle. So well played to Alfredino. But here we go. Last game up against Alfredino. Bretonnians. It's going to be a heavy infantry build. And I'm just going to be winning the frontline fight for Alfredino. Let's see. What did most of his money go into? 2 units of Blood Knights. Some single entities, a Mortis engine. And then that's basically it. There's not a lot going on here. So I should be able to win the infantry fight fairly handily. I wish I had a single unit of archers. I sort of assumed that they'd get shut down with summons. But you know, this sort of works out okay. Now the Blood Knights, they're looking to cycle charge my paladins. I need to punish them for that as much as possible by using these Grail Knights effectively, and the paladins to sort of nip them in the back as time permits. I also need to keep my infantry moving lest they get absolutely surrounded here. And yeah, I'll just be slowly taking trades. The Mortis engine will be looking for a good opportunity to the Mortis engine will be looking for an opportunity to hit my my infantry for sure. But it may have a pretty hard time. I have the Paladin and the Fey Enchantress sort of stalking around, sort of running interference. And if I ever do see a blob, I should be able to get the Fey Enchantress to get quite a bit of damage into. But the front line is getting underway. This is where the Battle Pilgrims will shine. And yeah, it's all about that fight now. Will my forces be able to win the front line well enough where the Fey Enchantress no, not where the Fey Enchantress. Will my infantry be able to win the front line well enough where it's essentially just my massive amounts of infantry against a few Blood Knights? Well, one thing I have done wrong is that the Fey Enchantress is getting blocked up by a Blood Knight, and she might actually die here due to a pretty big misplay. And she dies. Now that is absolutely terrible to say the least. Oh my gosh, she just got pinned down by a Blood Knight. Oh, jeez, that's really bad. But it doesn't mean that we are without fight. You can see the Battle Pilgrims have won the frontline engagement very well. And it's just going to be the Mortis engine that's really the biggest issue. And I say just the Mortis engine like it's going to be no problem. And it's actually going to be a fairly big problem. The Mortis engine, with its AoE effect, is specialized against infantry. It is made to murder infantry. And without any healing, and without the Fey Enchantress, it's going to be pretty scary. One advantage that I do have, though. My infantry is actually winning very handily here. And it's basically just going to be single entities left for the vampire counts. As for the double paladin, it looks like one of them actually does get caught up here. Gonna have to pull him away. Try and get him back to safety. And it looks like he will be able to sneak out, unlike the Fey Enchantress. I do have a huge infantry advantage here, which is nice. The Mortis Engine is actually taking a while to drain them all down. So who knows? The balance of power too, surprisingly, is fairly close despite the fairly adverse circumstances. So I feel like this isn't the worst case scenario. So we'll just continue playing it out. Now chasing down the Blood Knights and just really focusing on these pole arms and having them carry the day for me. The Grail Relique will be providing huge leadership for these guys. They're basically unroutable unless they get extremely low on HP. And there we go. That's most of the Vampire Count's force is gone now. The Blood Knights are still operational, which is absolutely horrifying. But we'll see. The Double Paladins are trying their darndest. They're gonna move in, try and hit up this this Mortis Engine now. And if they can take it out, there's a chance. They're getting in some decent damage, nothing too crazy. And my Grill Knights are gonna be dying. So we'll see. However, I am pretty surprised how well I won the frontline fight. These Scab Scraths are definitely going to be causing a lot of issues, and this is almost assuredly a loss at this point. But I feel like if I had the Fey Enchantress, and maybe like 1 or 2 units of Peasant Bowmen, this could have actually been a pretty scary build. Just go really heavy on the infantry, and then shoot this thing to death with archers. As it did actually take the Vampire Counts a really long time to break through my front line. So definitely a good learning experience. That's another Scab Scrath. Just completely runs over my infantry. The Mortis Engine does get pretty low, but the Blood Knights are at high HP. And that's gonna be GG. Alrighty, so actually not the worst experiment in the world. I would cut, I guess, these spears for some Peasant Bowmen. But I do really like the Grail Reliques. And I almost don't even need cavalry here. So like maybe like cut the cavalry, cut these spears, put in some archers, and then just really win that frontline fight. The Mortis Engine won't really be able to engage. And then it's just a single entity. These guys are pretty tough to deal with. I might want even a Lewin instead of the Fey Enchantress. And then it feels like you're almost good to go. So something I'll want to look into in the future.